career diplomat. Enrique Manalo is current permanent representative to the United Nations and was acting Foreign Affairs Secretary under the Duterte administration for 2 months in 2017. Ambassador to the US Babe Romualdez says Manalo is expected to pursue the administration's independent foreign policy.
The independent foreign policy is more in reference to reaching out to major countries all over the world where we think is important for our relationship.
The new president, however, has yet to appoint secretaries for key departments for health given the raging pandemic and energy amid rising fuel prices.
I don't think there was a president, at least in
Anniversary celebration at Clark Air Base in Pampanga, his first event with the military. The first family, meanwhile, has decided to stay at Bahay Pagbabago inside the Malacanang compound. This was also the residence of former President Rodrigo Duterte and late President Noynoy Aquino.
It's being renovated right now. In the meantime, they're still staying in another place.
The chief executive, meanwhile, may hold his first cabinet meeting sometime next week. With an unprecedented mandate, the nation expects much from the new president, as high prices of food and fuel are now affecting ordinary households. Rex Remitio, CNN Philippines.
Some foreign diplomats also paid courtesy calls on President Marcos. They are the Vice President of Vietnam, ministers from Brunei, Cambodia, India, a parliament member from Korea, a deputy minister from Laos, and a trade diplomat from the United Kingdom. President Marcos joins the celebration of the Philippine Air Force as it marks its 75th anniversary. It was his first event with the military. Our senior correspondent David Santos joins us live from Clark in Pampanga. David, what did the president say?
Well, Pia, one of President Marcos's first public functions since being sworn into office and essentially becoming the commander-in-chief of our armed forces is to be here in Clark, Pampanga to join in the Diamond anniversary of the Air Force. President Marcos is joined by former President and Pampanga 2nd District Congresswoman Gloria Macapagal Arroyo. This is a significant occasion for the Air Force, which started off as the Philippine Constabulary Air Corps in 1930 before becoming the Philippine Air Force in 1947. In the 1950s to 1960s, the Air Force played a key role in making the Philippines as a military powerhouse in Southeast Asia. Now, in his speech tonight, Mr. Marcos praised the Air Force for its security missions to defend us as a sovereign state against internal and foreign threats, as well as its countless efforts to respond to natural and man-made disasters. The Air Force is critical for our nation's territorial defense, primarily to monitor our airspace against intrusions, but also the major military service expected to be the first responder against any aggression in any part of our territory. Mr. Marcos also vowing to continue the Air Force's modernization program initiated by previous administrations. There was supposed to be an aerial display composed of a high-speed opener and flyover showcasing some of the Air Force's most recent asset acquisitions, such as the FA-50 fighter jets, Super Tucano attack aircraft, and Black Hawk helicopters. This, however, had to be called off at the last minute due to bad weather. Now, President Marcos, just before he went on air, has left this venue here in Clark, but moments earlier, he had dinner Toyo, as well as with other defense and military officials. Pia.
It's David Santos there reporting. The Trade Department welcomes its new secretary, former University of the Philippines President Alfredo Pascual. Pascual formally assumes the post in a turnover ceremony earlier today. On top of his priorities, continues supporting micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. He says the country should develop local industries that impact food security. Pascual promises help for coconut, coffee, and cacao producers, as well as regional industries.
Our objective is to enable small business into the domestic and global value chains. Our country can be competitive, but we have to do it region by region. Everyone should progress and no one should be left behind.
Among other plans, Pascual mentioned improve the ease of doing business in the country, attract investments and expand exports, and review the agency's structure and processes. New Transportation Chief Jaime Bautista announces his priorities as he kicks off his first 100 days in office. At the leadership turnover in the agency, Bautista promised to provide accessible, affordable, comfortable, and safe transport service nationwide. Although he did not specify how, Bautista says under the Marcos presidency, the transport sector will become at par with global standards. Now, just a day after President Marcos' inauguration and weeks before the 19th Congress begins, a lawmaker files a resolution seeking a longer term for the president and vice president. The proposal is to amend the Constitution by extending the term of service from the current single term of 6 years to a 5-year term with possible re-election. Pampanga Representative Aurelio Don Gonzales Jr. has filed a resolution which also proposes that the president and the vice president shall be voted in tandem to encourage strong party system. Gonzales argues the current term to implement long-term programs and policies appears to be insufficient. Gonzales is also pushing to increase the current 3-year term of elected local officials and congressmen, excluding barangay leaders, to 5 years with a limit of only 2 consecutive terms. The Constitution currently allows them to have 3 consecutive terms. At the Senate Center, Alan Peter Cayetano says he will immediately file a bill that will grant a one-time 10,000 peso cash assistance to families amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Cayetano consistently lobbied for the 10K Ayuda bill as Taguig congressman, but it failed to be included in the Bayanihan 3 COVID-19 aid package. Aside from pushing it in the Senate, Cayetano also urged newly sworn-in Taguig Pateros representatives Ricardo Cruz Jr. and Maria Amparo Zamora to file the counterpart bill in the House of Representatives. The House and Senate will jointly open the first regular session of the 19th Congress on July 25th. The Health Department sees another increase in COVID-19 cases. The daily average rose to 914 nationwide from June 24th to July 1st, 53% higher than the 599 infections the week before. The DOH flags Metro Manila and 89 other areas with rising cases, including Lucena City, Bohol, and Tawi-Tawi, now at moderate to critical risk. In Tawi-Tawi, 90% of COVID-19 beds are occupied as of June 30. Now, despite the situation, Joey Concepcion, former presidential advisor for entrepreneurship, urges incoming health officials not to raise the alert level, which will impact businesses.
That will really kill many MSMEs who have just taken new loans to refinance their debt. So we will really have to prevent alert levels from being raised.
Most areas in the country are under the lowest alert level 1. Next on Newsnight, today marks day 1 of another provisional GP fare hike as commuters begin paying for MRT rides again after 3 months. And former President Rodrigo Duterte and former Vice President Leni Robredo spend their first day out of office. We tell you what lies ahead for citizens Duterte and Robredo, only here on CNN Philippines.
Mas pinalawak, mas pinalakas. RPN sa iba't ibang mga lalawigan. DZRL Bataan, DZTG Tuguegarao, DZBS Baguio, DZKI Iriga, DYKB Bacolod, DYKC Cebu, DXKS Surigao, DXKD Dipolo, DXKO Cagayan de Oro, DXKT Davao, DXKP Pagadian, DXXX Zamboanga, DXDX General Santos, DWIZ 882 Manila at RPN Provincial Stations.
Your talk station.
Kini Pagadian.
amid rising fuel prices.
I don't think there was a president, at least in recent memory, that was able to complete his cabinet right away.
You're watching Newsnight on CNN Philippines. Jeepney rides now cost at least 11 pesos nationwide, while some commuters believe this could help drivers amid soaring pump prices. A transport group says the provisional hike is not enough to keep jeepneys on the road. George Quiles with the details.
Some commuters were surprised to learn about the new fare increase. 11 pesos for traditional jeepneys and 13 pesos for the modern ones. Among them, Aida Espino of Cotabato, who is currently in Manila to process her papers for a job overseas. With a tight budget, Espino says the new fare hike is a burden, especially since there was already a 1 peso increase imposed last month.
Mahirap kasi sir, kasi lahat nagtaasan na. Sa hirap ng buhay, titiisin na lang.
Joy Salvador meanwhile says she understands the situation of the drivers who bear the brunt of soaring oil prices. However, she suggests that workers like her must also get pay hike in order to survive.
Alam ko, nag-generate na yung new minimum ngayon na around 570 ata. So tumaas na din siya at least 30 to 40 pesos. Pero hindi pa din yan makatarungan para sa lahat ng mga bilihin, especially yung mga bayarin sobrang taas na talaga.
For jeepney driver Freddy Sabado, while he's thankful for a new round of provisional fare increase, it's still not enough for drivers to make a decent living. It was his birthday on Thursday, but instead of celebrating like he used to do, he just took a day off and stayed home.
Parang kulang pa rin po sa aming mga driver po yun, sir. Kasi tataas, pag biglaan ng taas, mga 5 piso, 4 na piso, doon kami naririndi, sir.
For Transport Group Piston, passing on the burden to commuters is not the solution to the problem. Instead, they are challenging the government to suspend the excise tax on oil so that all sectors consuming fuel will benefit.
Hindi naman ito yung magre-resolve sa patuloy na pagtaas na ng presyo ng petrolyo dahil hindi lang naman ang mga driver ng public transport ang gumagamit. At siyempre, kapag tumataas nga yung presyo ng petrolyo, tumataas yung ating bilihin, yung ating mga pangangailangan sa ating tahanan.
There are still pending petitions for a 5 to 6 peso minimum fare increase for jeepneys. The LTFRB will hear these petitions on July 27th. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Rail commuters will also have to deal with more expenses. Page Javier reports MRT rides are no longer free beginning today.
It's back to reality for MRT3 passengers as the Libreng Sakay program comes to an end. No more free rides means commuters reviewing their already tight budget. The Duterte administration's program, which lasted for 3 months, ended June 30. MRT3 officials say the program benefited over 28 million passengers from March 28 to June 30. One of them is single mother Chini Gangoso, who commutes daily from Taft Avenue to her workplace near Shaw Boulevard.
Hirap na lang sa budget, siguro mga 1,800 din mahigit yung na-save ko sa loob ng 3 months. Siyempre malaking tulong din yun sa akin. Imbis na ibayad ko sa MRT, nadadagdag ko dun sa padala sa anak ko.
Despite the additional expense, she would rather take the MRT instead of other modes of public transportation.
Kung walang choice, syempre magbabas. Yun. Pero sa akin, convenient MRT pa rin. No choice. May bayad o wala.
Senior citizen Maria Ana Jubilo shared her experience when she was asked to pay for a ride this morning.
Surprise ka kasi kumbaga sa dati, pagkuha mo ng ticket, bigay ka agad. Ngayon, may bayad na nga pala. Sana matuloy pa rin. Malaking bagay kaya yun sa mga kagaya namin na nagbabayad everyday, nagko-commute.
Jubilo says she saved about 600 pesos per month because of the free rides. Some students we spoke to are divided on the Libreng Sakay program.
Namiss agad namin yung libre kasi medyo mataas kasi yung pamasahe. Malaking tulong kasi yung free transportation sa katulad sa amin ng mga estudyante pa lang.
Nawala yung convenience na parang dire-diretso na lang, tas wala nang iisipin na pamasahe. Pero naiintindihan naman kasi kailangan din para makabangon ulit yung ekonomiya natin.
Most passengers hope government can find the funding to revive the Libreng Sakay program. It remains unclear if President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. will bring back the initiative. The Libreng Sakay program was implemented in March to help ease the burden of commuters amid the rising prices of fuel and basic goods. Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
President Marcos has given the go signal to extend free bus rides on EDSA until December. A Libreng Sakay program will also be carried out for students using the MRT, LRT2, and PNR once in-person classes resume in August. Former President Rodrigo Duterte begins his life as a private citizen. Tristan Odalo gives us a look at Duterte's homecoming in the city of Davao yesterday and what's next for him after 6 years.
There are few things former President Rodrigo Duterte plans to do shortly after turning over the presidency to President Bongbong Marcos. Get 8 hours of sleep and spend quality time with his family, especially his grandchildren.
As any president, buhay pa ngayon, will tell you, it's a killing job.
Duterte also looks forward to more motorcycle rides and catch up with his daughter, Vice President Sara Duterte.
Walang panahon. Busy sa kampanya. Ito naman, distansya ako.
On Thursday from Malacanang, Duterte went to a shopping mall and spent time with his security personnel. He then proceeded and was greeted with a water salute and cheers from passengers. The proud son of Davao thanked his supporters for rallying with him as he cited some landmark laws, including the free college tuition and universal healthcare laws.
Pahinga muna. Kailangan niya magpahinga. A well-deserved rest po mula sa trabaho. Napakahirap po ako. Nakita ko talaga yung hirap ng trabaho in the last 6 years. Salamat Mr. President. Salamat PRRD sa iyong serbisyo para sa ating bayan.
CNN Philippines also visited his residence in Barangay Matina, Davao. Security remains tight in the area. The owner of one of Duterte's favorite carinderias is also excited to welcome him back as a private citizen.
Even as a civilian, former President Duterte says that he is not closing his doors on the possibility of participating on discussions on issues that matter most to Filipinos. But for now, Citizen Duterte is on rest mode and he is happy that he's finally back home. In Davao City, Tristan Udalo, CNN Philippines.
But a progressive group wants the former president to be held accountable for his so-called sins to the Filipino people. Bayan says that among the 30 supposed sins of Duterte were his bloody drug war, pandemic response, and massive government debt. Bayan also says it finds fault with him for the return of the Marcoses to Malacanang, former Senator Laila de Lima's detention, the Marawi siege in 2017, and the 2.5 years of martial law in Mindanao. Duterte faced potential scrutiny from the International Criminal Court. Its prosecutor, Karim Khan, said he would seek to reopen a probe into possible crimes against humanity committed during the drug war. Former Vice President Leni Robredo hits the ground running a day after stepping down from office. Robredo leads the launch of her Angat Buhay non-government organization, aiming to make it the biggest volunteer network in the country. Anjo Alimario has that and more about Robredo's first day as Citizen Leni.
Hindi man tayo nagtagumpay, hindi man tayo nagbogi, nagtagumpay pa din tayo.
She's now attorney Leni Robredo, but her commitment to help the poor and the powerless did not change. Robredo leads the kick-off of Angat Buhay NGO a day she left the office of the Vice President, a promise she kept when she addressed her supporters during her pasasalamat in May.
We really started something very, very special during the campaign. At hindi pwede na mapupunta sa wala yung ating naumpisahan.
Angat Buhay will focus on 4 advocacy areas: health, education, disaster relief and rehabilitation, and community engagement. Robredo says the group will come up with a nutrition and food security program in partnership with local governments.
Malaking problema natin ang stunting. Kapag nagkulang sa pagkain ang mga bata, maaga siyang mapapag-iwanan. At habang buhay niyang kakailanganang maghabol.
She also wants to convert community learning hubs open during pandemic into remedial centers to focus on reading and math.
Bakit ito ang gusto nating gawin? Tungkot na realization. Napakaraming pumupunta sa centers, ang iba mga grade 5, grade 6, non-readers pa.
The organization will also assist communities on rehabilitation and risk reduction and resiliency. Robredo says Angat Buhay will not set up local chapters. Instead, it will tap local groups to carry out programs.
Yung pinapaniwalaan natin na klase ng governance from the ground up, hindi yung dinidikta ng nasa taas yung gagawin sa nasa baba.
The Museo ng Pag-asa will soon open, she notes, which will house some of the artworks given to her during the campaign. Others are now part of the fundraising event, where visitors can buy paintings from 1,000 to 10,000 pesos. Robredo says she's excited with what lies ahead of Angat Buhay, ready to keep the spirit of volunteerism alive. Anjo Alimario, CNN Philippines.
Straight ahead, the NBA superstar Kevin Durant could part ways with his current team soon, as multiple reports reveal he requested for a trade from the Brooklyn Nets. And a member of K-pop sensation BTS drops his first solo single. We'll have more after the break. Stay tuned.
Mas pinalawak, mas pinalakas. RPN sa iba't ibang mga lalawigan. DZRL Bataan, DZTG Tuguegarao, DZBS Baguio, DZKI Iriga, DYKB Bacolod, DYKC Cebu, DXKS Surigao, DXKD Dipolo, DXKO Cagayan de Oro, DXKT Davao, DXKP Pagadian, DXXX Zamboanga, DXDX General Santos, DWIZ 882 Manila at RPN Provincial Stations.
Kini ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, Istasyon DXKP, 1377 kHz sa dial sa inyong mga radyo. Nagsibya gikan sa dakbayan sa Pagadian, DXKP AM. Your talk station. Kini Pagadian.
Celebration at Clark Air Base in Pampanga, his first event with the military. The first family, meanwhile, has decided to stay at Bahay Pagbabago inside the Malacanang compound. This was also the residence of former President Rodrigo Duterte and late President Noynoy Aquino.
It's being renovated right now. In the meantime, they're still staying in another place.
The chief executive, meanwhile, may hold his first cabinet meeting sometime next week. With an unprecedented mandate, the nation expects much from the new president, as high prices of food and fuel are now affecting ordinary households. Rex Remitio, CNN Philippines.
Welcome back. The biggest deal in NBA history could be keeping Nikola Jokic in the Denver Nuggets. News outlets like Stadium and The Athletic report say Jokic agrees to a $264 million Supermax contract extension with the team. The two-time MVP is also set to have a player option for the 2027 to 2028 season worth $60 million. And it may be the end of Kevin Durant's time in the Brooklyn Nets. The NBA website, citing multiple reports, says Durant requested a trade from Brooklyn. This comes just a few days after Kyrie Irving opted into his contract with the team for next season. Hip-hop meets rock and K-pop in BTS rapper J-Hope's new track. More is the first single off Hobie's solo album, Jack in the Box. The music video is also dropped today, racking up 3 million views in just the first hour of release. Fans can listen to the rest of the songs in Jack in the Box by July 15th. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
After more than 2 years into the pandemic, we're all hopeful for some sense of normalcy. But even as the government lifts some restrictions, we can't let our guards down. Just like any virus, COVID-19 continues to develop newer variants. In fact, the Philippines recently recorded its first confirmed case of the Omicron BA.2, an even more transmissible variant responsible for the surge now seen in the United States. But what does this mean for our country, and how can we best protect against it? On the program today, we'll share all you need to know about the Omicron BA.2 and other subvariants. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Is another COVID-19 surge on the way? That's what we want to find out. So our guests are here today to tell us more about the new, more transmissible Omicron subvariant. With us is Dr. Guido David. He's a mathematician from the Octa Research. Also with us is Dr. Tony Liachon. He's a health reform advocate from Manila Doctors Hospital. Before there was Omicron BA2 and these other subvariants, there was Omicron BA.1. Now, let's talk about currently BA.2. Why is this a cause of concern? Is this the predominant strain now seen here in the Philippines? I'll start the discussion first with Dr. David.
Back in January, we saw a surge. It was mainly the BA1 and BA2 which were spreading here in the country. Most recently, we discovered that there was this subvariant of the BA2, which is actually the BA2.12. It was detected from a woman from Finland, but it didn't seem to cause a surge because we haven't seen a spike in cases yet. A little more infectious than the BA2 and BA1 and nag-spread dito sa bansa natin. The BA2.12 has been detected in India and yung 2.12.1 sa New York, some parts of the United States. It's more infectious. They say may vaccine escape ito mga ito or immune evasion. So ito yung mga concerns natin because posibleng magkaroon ng pagtaas ng bilang ng kaso dito sa bansa natin pag kumalat ito mga variants or subvariants na binabantayan.
When is a new subvariant seen? How different is this virus? How much has it mutated before it can get a new subvariant?
Pag may Omicron, nagkaroon siya ng mutation na konti, panibagong subvariant na yan. And meron pang mga recombinants, yung mga dati binabantay nila, mga Delta Cron recombinant or meron ding Omicron BA1, BA2 recombinant. Kumbaga, nagkahalo na yung nila, yung DNA nila, kumbaga.
Now, I'd like to ask Dr. Tony, right now, BA12.1 is the one in the Philippines now that is going up. What kind of symptoms, what kind of effects on the body do we see that is different from the original Omicron or even Delta?
The Delta would actually present with upper respiratory tract infections. So it means, based on a UK app study, is actually a sore throat, a raspy sore throat. And then you can have fever, cough, dimade, muscle fatigue. Predominant niyang kaibahan sa Delta, it spares the lungs. So ibig sabihin, wala ka masyadong affliction ng lungs. So therefore, yung respiratory failure, yung tinatawag nating severe acute respiratory failure, hindi nakikita as opposed to the Delta variant. Ang Omicron, it is manageable, it is actually more benign. Ang problem lang nito, one, you can have long COVID syndrome. So it may seem to be not fatal, but it can have prolonged COVID symptoms, like you can have brain fog, you can have anxiety, you can have palpitations, shortness of breath. And for a long time, more than 3 or 6 months, or even 6 months, patients would have this kind of problem. So akala mo lang, simple lang siya, pero problema yan.
The very beginning of the pandemic, some claim that the majority of the country needed to be vaccinated for us to reach herd immunity. So a lot of Filipinos now are vaccinated with their primary series, boosted. How does these new variants affect? Parang bang back to zero na naman? We need to get another round of boosters at least to be protected?
The complete talaga na we have to redefine to protect us from Omicron is not 2 vaccines but actually 3 doses. So meaning to say, the one approved the Department of Health from the US FDA last December, dapat na-realize ng mga tao na dapat 3 doses. Unfortunately, hindi natin na-push masyado yon. So ang dalawang vaccines natin 67 million, and then ang ating third dose, which is the first booster, ay 13 million lang. So kapos tayo, 3 doses. Ang target natin with the Omicron ay dapat 90% herd immunity. May 4th dose na nga. So wala pa tayo na uumpisan sa 4th dose, even approved in the US. That is for elderly above 50, senior citizen, and immunocompromised. So ang challenge natin is that we have incomplete 3rd dose and we have not yet started with the 4th dose to protect us from surges from the variants mentioned by Professor Quito. So if the country population is resilient, then we will be protected.
Whether through vaccination or following minimum health standards, we all need to do our part to keep those around us safe. When we return, how Filipinos can live with COVID-19 and all its subvariants. We're your partner in healthcare. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk. From wearing masks to social distancing, COVID-19 has changed our way of life. 2 years later, how can we best live with the virus? I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk. Dr. Guido, earlier we mentioned how the activities of these past few days, especially during the campaign season, may have prompted a lot more congregations, gatherings for that matter. Would this play a role? Would we see the effects of these probably in the weeks to come?
We're monitoring the numbers to see if there's going to be any increase in numbers due to the activity of the previous past few days. But we have been having, campaign sorties and rallies in mass numbers over the past months, and we haven't seen an increase in cases. I mean, except for a few upticks, very small upticks here and there. So our belief is that for a surge to occur, there would have to be a confluence of factors. So one is the gatherings and complacency of public when they're no longer complacent, but that alone is not sufficient. The second component is the vaccine immunity that's waning, and we know that that happens after some time. That's why we require booster shots. And the third component, or the third factor, is the variant of concern that we are monitoring. And that's why this is very important. When we see some variants appear all over the world, and it's also more concerning once these variants or subvariants or recombinants enter the country, then we are more concerned, because now we have these three factors coming together, and that may be decisive in causing a surge in cases.
Is that possibility of a surge something that is inevitable, like what we see in other countries?
There's a triad of reasons for this. The variants of concern, the waning immunity, plus the deliberate or inadvertent violation of the minimum public health standards. With liberality of the travel, as you can see, all over Asia, naging central tayo sa Asia with South Africa, Vietnam, and even the New Zealand and Australia or Vietnam. Other countries na model countries in the world, affected sila because late nakarating ang variant of concern sa kanilang BA.2. Tayo wala because nauna tayo. So it means na eventually it will catch up with us depending on our preparation.
Before we continue with how to prepare for those, I'd like to ask, could you briefly explain now, we have BA4 and 5. Could you talk about those two subvariants that are looming on the sides?
These are definitely concerning kasi yung BA.4 and .5 very similar. They were first identified in South Africa. And it's not necessarily the case that they came from South Africa. The Beta variant and also Omicron came from South Africa, or at least were first identified in South Africa, because they do a lot of genomic sequencing in South Africa. So that's why they're sort of ahead of the science. In South Africa, increased from a low of about 1,000 per day. Now they're up to 10,000 per day. So that's a 10 times increase in just a few weeks. So it is definitely concerning, and they have already sequenced this as well in the United States. Once in the US, it's very likely that it's going to enter our borders, because we have open borders and we have a lot of people traveling to and from the United States. It is a concern because, if people are unvaccinated, the rate of severity could be high, as in comparable with the previous variants.
People are still wearing masks nowadays. They saw some respite because hindi na kailangan ang face shields. But are we looking at a scenario where masks, face shield will be back again, aside from getting another round of boosters?
It's a given that we will not do away with the face mask. Of course, the face shield has been answered already, even by the WHO. Hindi natin kailangan. Ang kailangan natin high-grade or medical-grade face mask which can protect us.
While we still have the mask mandate, our country has, as mentioned, started to really open its borders. So under Alert Level 1, Filipinos are allowed to once again travel to many destinations in and out of the country. While we're still living with the virus, we still need to take every precaution necessary. When we return, tips to help boost your immune system and live healthy, as well as the question of, is the Philippines prepared? Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk. With the easily transmissible Omicron BA2 variant in our country, as well as BA4 and BA.5 on the way, we need to take every step to protect each other from COVID-19. Dr. Tony, the question is, are we prepared?
I think with the many surges that we have, I think we are prepared. The only question is our complacency at this point in time, since we have a quiescent period for about 3 months na mababa ang cases natin. But we don't want the Omicron surge that will surprise us. So definitely, if we could have start stockpiling a rapid antigen test, will be effective. Whatever variants can be managed at home as long as we are empowered to have the rapid antigen test. That's number one. Number two, we need to have the mask, medical grade, or those that can protect us, high quality ones. And then number three, yung mga over-the-counter drugs like analgesic, antipyretic, yung mga vitamins dati, nagkawalaan yan. So I think dapat ma-alert ng Department of Health, yung mga pharmacies, that they should have that in place. I think we should go back right now to the vaccination and then prioritize yung mga dapat bakunahan, A1, A2, A3, and then get the boosters right there to the ones that will need it.
What advice can you give people to not be complacent and just continue on that health sense that they currently have?
There's a false sense of security that the pandemic is over, and that's because they see that the cases are low, there's no longer a threat, DOH is no longer reporting large numbers. So for most people, they think it's over, but the truth is it's not. I mean, we're at the low point, yes, but it's not necessarily over. I mean, yes, we have vaccinations, but not everyone is vaccinated. I mean, our vaccine coverage for the country is only around 60%, and the low booster coverage. We can't wait for these variants to enter the country and start surging before we act. We have to be proactive, and then we might be able to prevent a surge, or at least control the surge in cases if we're proactive, if we're following health protocols, if we're getting ourselves vaccinated and getting ourselves boosters.
BA.4 and BA.5 around the corner. Do we already know what some of the standout symptoms of them are, like what you mentioned earlier for the BA.2?
They will present with sore throat, fever, cough, muscle fatigue, and general body pains. It's a typical respiratory tract infection. And the predominant symptom is usually a sore throat, a raspy sore throat, and it will spare the lungs. That is the classic presentation. And it would not actually affect the lungs, just like the Delta. So, ang suspicion natin, basta't meron kayong flu-like manifestation at may sore throat, then testing na kaagad kayo for rapid antigen test. Iisa lang naman kasi ang description niyan sa Omicron. Be careful guys kasi magtatag-ulad yung July. Kung mag-expire ang vaccine natin by July, by just projection, kasi seasonal kasi as a doctor, nakikita ko sa clinic, seasonality. Yang July hanggang October, dyan yung mga upper respiratory tract infections. Nandyan din ang dengue fever, andin dyan mga pneumonia. So aside from that, prepare yourself with the flu shots then and the pneumonia shots.
And before we go, Dr. Guido, do you have any advice for our viewers?
In 2 years, alam ko pagod na yung mga tao sa pandemic, and nakikita naman natin yon. And our economy is also important. So we have opened up our businesses, all the business sectors, so that our economy can grow. The pandemic is not yet over. We're not yet at endemic levels. Even though the cases are low, cases are still high in other countries. There's still a surge in Taiwan. South Africa is surging again. The U.S. is up to 100,000 cases per day again. So always be vigilant and proactive. We can't wait for these new variants or sub-variants or recombinants to enter the country. We must be prepared. We can go out, but let's wear our face masks. Let's practice the minimum public health standards. And let's all stay safe.
And Dr. Tony, any advice?
Every Filipino citizen should be empowered, should be engaged, and should be educated. So, let's shrink the problem, paliitin natin ang problema. At the family level, we should be prepared. At the workplace level, we should be prepared. But let us not forget that the surge is still there, the variants are coming, and therefore we need to prepare ourselves.
With that, thank you very much, Dr. Guido David and Dr. Tony Leachon for being with us and keeping us up to date with the latest on Omicron and all its subvariants. Remember, always wear your face mask, practice social distancing, and get vaccinated and boosted. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching Med Talk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.